Another workday began at the sewing factory. The factory director, Irma, was bustling around trying to get everything done. She had 2 meetings with suppliers, then she had to review new sketches and inspect new designs. In short, there was a lot to do. Unfortunately, her car broke down in the morning, so she had to take it to the repair shop. In the evening, she decided not to call a taxi but to walk home instead. Light snow was falling on the street, crunching loudly underfoot. Irma climbed onto a bridge and watched as children played happily, laughing with each other. It reminded her of her own childhood. Those were good times. A little boy got into a sled pushed by the other kids and he swiftly went downhill. The sled picked up speed and went far beyond the riverbank, almost to the middle of the frozen river, and the boy tumbled onto the ice. Then the worst happened. The boy stood on the ice, weakened by the current, and immediately fell through, screaming for help. The other children were frightened, but none dared to approach and save their friend. Irma ran down to help the boy, who was no longer visible. She didn't understand how miraculously she managed to pull him out. She had to break the ice and dive after him. Thankfully, the river wasn't very deep. Someone passing by managed to call an ambulance, and the boy was taken to the hospital. Irma refused hospitalization and was taken home. Irma's spouse was shocked to see her soaking wet at the doorstep. He helped her change and learned what had happened, scolding her. "Darling, why do you always have to be the one to intervene? Why didn't you go to the hospital? Let me run you a hot bath. You're always sticking your nose into other people's problems. You don't even know that child. What if you had drowned yourself? The water is freezing." The woman tried to warm up, wrapped in a blanket, whispering, "Ah!" "Noel, how can you say that? It's a child, someone's son. What if he had drowned? What was I supposed to do? Just walk by. Don't worry, darling. The most important thing is that everyone is alive and well." But things turned out to be not so simple. During the night, Irma developed a high fever, and Noel called an ambulance. She was taken to the hospital, where she was diagnosed with pneumonia. Now Irma lay in a hospital room, receiving treatment, taking medications, and enduring painful injections. 3 other women shared the hospital room with her. Irma even managed to become friends with one of them, a young patient named Natalie. She was sociable but seemed deeply sad. Natalie was being treated for acute bronchitis. Over the week, Irma's spouse never came to visit her, citing work commitments. However, he frequently called her via video chat. During one of these calls, Irma stepped into the corridor to avoid disturbing the other patients. But today, she didn't make it in time, and Noel's conversation with her inadvertently caught Natalie's attention. Her husband waved at her, updating her on household matters, mentioning he took necessary documents to work, and asking if there was anything she needed, all as usual. Irma ended the call, hung up, and only then noticed Natalie's surprised gaze. It was as if she had seen a ghost. Irma didn't understand, and asked, "What's wrong, Natalie? Is everything okay with you? You're looking at me strangely." The pale girl spoke in a melancholic tone. "Please forgive me, Irma, I didn't mean to. I didn't know that Noel is your husband." Irma was completely bewildered by this strange reaction. She stared at Natalie, waiting for her to continue. After a brief pause, Natalie timidly began, "You see, I had a relationship with Noel. I loved him so much, thought we would get married. I honestly didn't know he was married. I swear. He told me he had been divorced for a long time, and his wife turned out to be crazy. He courted me so beautifully, gave me flowers, took me to the movies. I eagerly awaited every meeting with him, and then I got pregnant. I understand it's my fault, I know, but after that, Noel changed drastically. He yelled at me and insisted on an abortion. I was in shock. I loved him so much and never expected such a reaction. I refused to have an abortion. That's when Noel completely lost it and ended our relationship. In the end, all the troubles seemed to happen within just a couple of days. I lost my job due to downsizing, and then I fell seriously ill. I thought it was just a common cold, but soon I had to be hospitalized, thanks to the doctors who helped me recover. I don't know how to go on living. I have almost no money left, and where will I find a job now? I feel terribly guilty in front of you. Please forgive me, if you can." Natalie covered her face with her hands and started to cry. Irma tried to make sense of her own feelings. Strangely, she should have hated Natalie. After all, She turned out to be her husband's mistress. But as Irma looked at this young and foolish girl, she couldn't help but feel sorry for her. Irma sighed and said, "Why should I hate you? If Noel truly loved me, he would never have cheated on me. I'm even grateful to you. Noel never wanted children, so he's unlikely to accept your baby. Don't worry, I'll help you. I'll take you into my company. I need an accountant. You did the right thing by keeping your child. It's such a motivation to keep going and fight through hardships. I dreamed of becoming a mother, but apparently it wasn't meant to be. I'll talk to Noel when I get home. Lately, he's been too audacious. He doesn't even work." Natalie looked at Irma with astonishment and said, "Thank you so much, Irma. I'm so grateful to you. You won't regret hiring me." Irma called her HR colleague and instructed them to hire Natalie. Then she quietly said, "Excuse me, I need some time alone to think." Understandingly, Natalie nodded and quietly left the room as the other patients were undergoing procedures. Irma closed her eyes and reminisced about her entire family life with Noel, her childhood, pondering when and how her loving husband turned into such a jerk. Irma grew up in a large family. Her father worked as a loader at a factory, always tired, perpetually grim and rough. Irma's mother raised 3 children, trying to make ends meet with odd jobs. Irma was the eldest in the family, with a younger sister named Lily and a brother named Devon. Therefore, she had to shoulder most of the household responsibilities. They lived in extreme poverty, always short of money. The girl wore clothes given to them by acquaintances or neighbors, often too big and looking awkward. Because of this, Irma was always picked on at school. Memories from her childhood were not the happiest. Her parents seemed to not understand or completely forgot that Irma was still a child, and just like everyone else, she wanted to have fun and play, to be pitied and supported. She always went for walks with her younger brother and sister. Those were probably her happiest memories. Irma built snowmen with them, slid down hills, and rolled in the snow. But the older the girl grew, the more she wanted to quickly get an education and have her own apartment. She excelled in her studies. Her teachers praised her. The only problem was that at home there were no proper conditions to study in peace and quiet. Irma often stayed late studying at the school library, where it was quiet and calm and no one bothered her. However, at home her mother would start scolding, "Where have you been for so long? Who will play with Devon? I can't handle everything alone." Irma felt deeply hurt. "Why did you have 3 of us then? Is it my fault? I'm planning to go to university, Mom. You've turned me into some kind of servant." Her mother became even more indignant and shouted, "University? Who put such ideas in your head? Your teacher, was it? You'll study sewing, and that's enough. What does a woman need higher education for? You're selfish, daughter, only thinking about yourself. What about me? What about your brother and sister? Aren't you going to help us? You're not going anywhere." Irma was hurt, but she still followed her own path. After graduation, she secretly left home for another city to attend university. Her beloved teacher, Martha, truly helped her. It was thanks to her that Irma was given a room in the dormitory. Irma passed her exams with flying colors and became a student at the economics university. Only then did she call her mother. Irma hoped that maybe now her mother would praise her, be happy for her, and wish her luck. Unfortunately, the girl was mistaken. How could you leave like that? You lied to Oos, saying you were going to your friends. Come back home immediately. Lily and Devon miss you. You're like a mother to them. Your father is furious. Think about how you'll live there. You won't succeed, you'll just waste your time. Your father and I have no money, and we won't have any." Irma cried with bitterness. "Thanks for the support, Mom. I'll make it. I love my brother and sister, but they're your children, not mine. You never believed in me." The girl started studying diligently. She was lucky that her roommate turned out to be a girl from a small village named Sydney. Her parents often sent her huge bags of food. Sydney wasn't greedy and shared her food with Irma, and that's how they survived. After a year, Irma started working part-time. She got an internship at a small sewing factory. She didn't earn much, but it was enough for food and basic necessities. Irma didn't forget about her sister and brother. They visited her in the dormitory during vacations. After graduating from university, Irma continued working at the sewing factory. The management noticed the determined and intelligent worker, and soon Irma became the chief accountant, then the deputy director, and after 5 years the director of the same factory. She bought her own apartment, fulfilling her long-held dream. All these achievements were hard-earned for her. It seemed important to her that she could now buy herself quality clothes and food, take care of herself. After all, that's what she had been striving for all these years. Now her mother no longer grumbled. She sincerely was proud of her daughter. Irma didn't forget about her family. Now she sent a substantial amount of money to her parents every month. She even helped her younger sister Lily to settle in life. Irma met her future husband by chance. She was so busy with her career that she didn't think about her personal life. One day, as usual, she was rushing to her favorite job when her heel broke right in the middle of the street, and she also sprained her ankle. Irma screamed in sudden pain and awkwardly sat down on the sidewalk. Just then, strong hands confidently lifted her up. A man fussed around her and said, "How did this happen? Are you badly hurt? A beautiful lady like you shouldn't be walking. Let me give you a ride. My name is Noel. I work downtown." Irma was delighted. "Well, what a coincidence. I work there too. Could you give me a ride to the sewing factory then? Thank you, Noel. You're a true gentleman. I really appreciate it." On the way, they struck up a conversation, and Irma really liked this pleasant young man. They agreed to grab coffee after work. Imagine Irma's surprise when, right on time, she saw Noel with a bouquet of delicate flowers and a large package. From it, he pulled out a shoebox and handed it to Irma. "These shoes are for you. I hope I got the size right." The shoes were very beautiful and fit Irma perfectly. Such a gesture completely won Irma over, and she looked at her companion with great affection and gratitude. And so their relationship gradually began. Irma fell in love almost immediately, and Noel didn't hide his feelings either. He was serious and talked about wanting a family. Irma's parents were thrilled with their son-in-law-to-be. Intelligent, well-read, polite. Irma's mum whispered to her, "Darling, you're so lucky. Noel is a great guy, not like your father. You should have a baby soon, then your family will be complete." Noel soon proudly introduced his fiancée to his mother, Taryn. "Mom, this is Irma, my fiancée, and she's also the director of a sewing factory. I love her, and we're getting married soon." Taryn smiled widely at Irma, but Irma immediately realized that the woman was not behaving sincerely at all. Most likely, Taryn was just very envious of Irma's success, especially when she found out that Irma had achieved everything on her own, growing up in a large family. Taryn herself was constantly changing her husbands, but with her awful character, no one could get along with her. Irma was used to not paying attention to the opinions of people who were strangers to her. So she didn't react to her mother-in-law, only thinking to herself, "Let her be jealous. What do I care? The main thing is that Noel is different. He truly loves me." At first, the young couple hardly ever argued. Noel was tender and caring. He always came home from work earlier than Irma, could even prepare dinner and greet her. He understood how responsible she was and tried to help her however he could. Of course, Irma dreamed of having children, but years passed and she couldn't get pregnant. Eventually, she did become pregnant, but they didn't have time to rejoice before she had a miscarriage. Doctors couldn't determine the cause. Irma suffered greatly, wanting support and sympathy from Noel, but he only scolded her for suffering too much. Irma had long noticed that he didn't seem particularly eager to have children, and when she suggested artificial insemination a year later, he became angry. "Darling, I think you've gone crazy with this idea. What if it doesn't work out? What if we have triplets? Personally, I'm not ready for that. We still have our whole lives ahead of us, and you're always complicating everything." However, Irma had been stubborn since childhood and didn't back down from her goal. She still convinced her husband to undergo the procedure. Pregnancy did occur, but another miscarriage happened just a month later. Despite the efforts of doctors, Irma barely survived this nightmare, took a long time to recover, even went to a psychologist. She felt damaged, not understanding why all this was happening to her. She no longer wanted to get out of bed or go to work. What was the point? If there were no children and probably never would be. And again, Noel pretended as if none of this concerned him at all. He distanced himself from her and became completely alien. To make matters worse, he even quit his job, claiming he had found a well-paying job from home, yet Irma never saw his salary. Where he disappeared to all day, Irma had no idea, but at that time she couldn't even imagine that he had a lover. It was unthinkable. Now the woman decided that as soon as she got out of the hospital, she would immediately divorce this scoundrel. Irma purposely left the hospital a day early without telling her husband anything. She decided to check what he was up to while she wasn't home. She quietly opened the front door and immediately noticed unfamiliar women's boots in the hallway and heard loud voices coming from the kitchen. Her mother-in-law was arguing with her husband about something. Irma sat down in the corridor and listened. Taryn was lecturing her son as if he were a little child. "When will you finally get rid of your wife and become rich? If she were gone, you would inherit all her property, her business, this apartment and the car. I can't stand her, and I'm waiting for her to disappear."
Noel sharply responded to her.
"I'm doing what I can. Very soon everything will be just like that. Her factory will be mine, and I'll sell this apartment. I have my plan, so don't interfere with me." Irma wasn't scared at all. She even found Noel's confidence amusing. Did he really think he could pull this off? Irma purposely coughed loudly and started tapping her shoes, pretending she had just walked in. Noel immediately rushed out of the kitchen with his mother, both fake smiling. "Irma, my love, you're already home. Why didn't you call? I would have come for you. How good. I missed you so much. It's so lonely and sad without you." Irma's mother-in-law started to leave. "It's good that you've recovered. Take care of yourself. Don't get sick. All the best." Irma watched this performance with disgust, her mood completely spoiled, and she said, "I'll go to my room and rest." She cried into her pillow for a long time, unable to believe that Noel could be so two-faced, so hypocritical. With horror, she realized that it was the end. Her family was no more. She barely fell asleep after midnight, with a firm intention to change everything tomorrow. In her sleep, she suddenly felt someone pounce on her. Irma didn't have time to understand anything before she felt something injected into her arm, and she saw Noel's profile blur. Everything that happened next felt like a delirium. Noel and another man with a folder were talking to her. She nodded and signed papers, and then Noel started pouring alcohol into her mouth, and she obediently swallowed without tasting it. Her husband began smashing everything around: furniture, a Chinese vase, picture frames, and a glass coffee table. People in white coats arrived, put Irma in a straitjacket, and took her to the hospital. Irma didn't come to her senses right away. Her head hurt badly. She was thirsty. She looked around and couldn't understand where she was. The room resembled some kind of cage. There were bars on the windows, her hands and feet were tied to the bed, and water was dripping unpleasantly from the tap in the corner, driving her crazy with its monotonous sound. The woman began to scream and call for help. "Hey, someone, help! Where am I?" She was truly terrified. She didn't understand where she was. What was this? A prison? A hospital? And why was she alone here? Her cries were quickly responded to. The sound of a key scraping in the lock was heard, and two people entered the room: a slender elderly man in a comical medical cap and his assistant. The elderly man suddenly said, "Good afternoon, you are in a private psychiatric hospital. You were brought here from home in an insane state. You attacked people and posed a danger to society. Your spouse reported that this is not the first incident, so we will carefully examine and treat you." Irma couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Doctor, have you lost your mind? This is nonsense. I'm not crazy at all. I'm the director of a sewing factory. My husband set this all up and now I'm being declared insane. Untie me immediately or you'll regret it." The doctor sighed. "Well, it seems like another relapse. Malcolm, give her a double dose. And you, dear, think about your behavior. If you behave well and quietly, maybe I'll even allow you some walks. Accept that you're ill, it's obvious. And denial is also a common occurrence among patients. Like it or not, we will still proceed with comprehensive drug therapy. Do you understand everything?" The doctor injected the woman with some murky liquid, and she fell into a trance again. Meanwhile, Natalie got a job at Irma's company. She worked hard, quickly grasping the tasks and preparing the first reports. She was eagerly awaiting the owner of the factory to come to work, as she wanted to personally thank her for the job opportunity. Days went by, but Irma still didn't show up. Moreover, instead of her husband Noel suddenly took charge. He called a meeting and informed the employees that after a prolonged illness and nervous breakdown, the factory director was admitted to a psychiatric hospital for treatment. He even presented all the documentation, according to which he had the right to manage all the company's assets and run the business. This was definitely unexpected, and the employees started discussing what would happen next. Everyone understood that Irma's husband had no connection to the sewing business and was unlikely to manage the business as well as she did. These rumors reached Natalie. She was shocked. Firstly, if she met Noel, he would surely fire her immediately, and secondly, she had personally talked to Irma, who was completely rational. How and why did she end up in a psychiatric hospital, especially right after Natalie had told her the truth about her husband? Something was definitely not right here. Natalie was very worried about Irma and decided to save her, as she had been so kind to her, giving her a job and forgiving her, and she was sure that Noel was capable of any villainy. First, the naive girl went to the police station, trying to explain incoherently that Irma had been forcibly placed in a psychiatric hospital and that her life and health were in danger. However, the investigator was very skeptical of her story. Natalie realized that nobody here would investigate or check anything. She was very upset, but she had no intention of backing down and decided to take a different approach. Natalie secretly opened Irma's personal file and read that she had a younger brother, Devon, who was a commander in the military unit. She decided to find him. Devon learned about everything and became deeply concerned. "You're right, Natalie. Something is definitely wrong here. My sister couldn't end up in such a place. Someone framed her. I never liked Noel, and his mother even less. Let's do this. I'm on duty right now and can't leave. I'll transfer you the money right away and send you the phone number of a good private detective. He's an acquaintance of mine. Contact him tomorrow. Let him find out which hospital Irma is in and what's happening to her. I'll try to take some leave and come too. We'll get to the bottom of this." Natalie was now convinced she was doing the right thing and contacted a private detective agency. She was received by Detective Paul. Unlike the police, where Natalie was just laughed at, things were different here. The detective listened carefully to everything, made notes, and keenly looked at the girl. Natalie was very nervous. Her hands were shaking. She pleaded, "Please figure this out. Irma is a sane woman. She helped me so much. I can't leave her in trouble. But her husband, Noel, is very dangerous and unscrupulous. I'm sure he's behind all this. Now he's running Irma's business and showing everyone documents where she supposedly allowed him to do so. Understand, she couldn't have signed that in her right mind. Just the day before, Irma found out that her husband had a mistress. I'm the one who told her everything." Paul looked at this frightened, charming girl and tried to reassure her. "Natalie, I'll take on this case, not just for the money, but also for the sake of our friendship with Irma's brother, Devon. I promise to see this through, and you can help me a little. Always show up at work with a recorder in your pocket and listen and watch everything closely. Meanwhile, I'll deal with this private clinic. After all, a patient can't be forcibly admitted without a court order. I have a feeling they've been bribed." Paul's attempts to meet with the patient or negotiate with the chief physician led nowhere. The institution was private. The detective was only told that Irma had been brought here from home in an unfit state, and now she was undergoing necessary treatment. Visits were prohibited, even for relatives. That was it. Paul didn't give up. He wrote a statement to the chief physician on behalf of Irma's brother, stating that the woman was being held against her will, and filed a complaint with the Ministry of Health and the prosecutor's office. But the detective didn't stop there. He found a list of clinic staff and approached one of the new orderlies, generously greasing his palm and giving him his assignment. Natalie actively assisted him, reporting on the factory's affairs every day and providing recordings from the recorder. Noel was transferring all the finances to strange accounts, apparently hoping to bankrupt the factory quickly and sell it. Unfortunately, there was nothing they could do about it yet, as only Irma could refute the signatures on the documents and powers of attorney boasted about by her husband. Paul and Natalie somehow grew closer unnoticed, and not only did they develop a friendship, but also romantic feelings. Natalie was afraid of these suddenly overwhelming emotions, as she was pregnant with another man's child, and it was unlikely that a stranger's child would become dear to the detective. Therefore, Their relationship was devoid of intimacy, only tenderness and affection. Irma didn't know what month it was, what the weather was like outside. She didn't care anymore. People in white coats fed her powerful drugs every day, but didn't release her from isolation. She sat on the bed for days, not wanting to eat. One day, orderly Caleb came to her and whispered softly, "Listen to me carefully. Your friend Natalie, your brother Devon, and the detectives will take you out of here. Trust me. And don't swallow these pills. Put them under your tongue, then spit them out. Otherwise, you'll remain like this for life. Don't give anything away, or if the doctor suspects anything, it's over for both of us." In Irma's cloudy eyes, the orderly saw a glimmer of consciousness. He hoped she understood him and quickly stepped away from the patient. He didn't need any trouble at work. Now Irma learned to deceive the doctors. She pretended to take the medication, but quietly disposed of the pills in the toilet. With each passing day, she did feel a little better. And most importantly, she had hoped that they would take her away from here soon. She mentally thanked Natalie, as she was the one who initially noticed her disappearance. Noel was jubilant. He sold Irma's apartment at a profit, transferred all the money to his account, and was now packing his bags with his mother. They were about to embark on a long journey. Irma's fate didn't concern him at all. He was completely indifferent to her. He had originally married her solely because she was wealthy, but in recent years, his unloved wife had become so tiresome to him that he decided to get rid of her. Noel already imagined himself sunbathing on the beach and flirting with young girls. He was sure that even if Irma ever got out of the psychiatric hospital, she wouldn't remember anything anyway. At least, that's what the doctor Noel bribed promised him. A month had passed. The detective, along with Irma's brother and Natalie, succeeded in getting Irma released. Investigations began at the clinic, revealing widespread violations. Many patients weren't even registered there. They all gathered to meet Irma at the clinic gates. Devon rushed to embrace his sister, crying and cursing. "Irma, my dear, what have these scoundrels done to you? I don't recognize my confident sister." "Well, it's okay. You'll stay with me for now, gather strength, and then we'll see. Everything will be fine. I'll always be by your side." Irma couldn't understand. "But why with you? I have my own apartment, and I have a lot of work to do." Natalie hugged Irma, unsure how to break the terrible truth to her. "It's not that simple, Irma. Noel sold everything, the apartment and the factory. We couldn't do anything because you had signed powers of attorney, giving him the right to dispose of all your property. We understand it was done under moral pressure from your husband." Irma covered her face with her hands and cried because now she was penniless. She couldn't believe her husband turned out to be such a heartless monster. She had a fit of hysteria, screaming until she was hoarse. "My God, why did he treat me like this? I loved him so much. I didn't do anything wrong to him. Is this humane?" Devon comforted his sister as best he could, bringing her to his rented apartment where Lily was already waiting. "Irma, my dear, I'm so glad to see you. Natalie told me everything. We owe her a lot. If it weren't for her, we wouldn't have known anything. Poor thing, you've lost weight. Don't be sad, sis. Life throws curveballs sometimes. You've always helped me and Devon, and now we won't abandon you. We just need some time." It took Irma a whole month to return to some semblance of normal life, but her husband's betrayal still haunted her. Her family was always there for her, and Natalie and Paul often visited her. They were now together, and Irma was grateful for that. She understood that she couldn't live off her family forever, so one day over lunch she said, "Well guys, thank you for everything, for your support and help. I need to look for a job and start my life from scratch." Devon cautiously asked, "What do you plan to do? Will you try organizing production again, or something else?" Irma sighed heavily and shook her head. "No, brother, I don't want to. I realized that this race for career and money didn't bring me happiness. On the contrary, you see how it all ended. So I'll take on some really simple job, at least until I recover from all this nightmare." Suddenly Lily said, "Listen, Irma, I work as a cook in a cafe, and this cafe belongs to a country resort. They need a chambermaid there. If you want, I'll arrange everything. There's such clean air there. You'll walk on weekends, and nature will heal all your emotional wounds. And I'm not far from there at all. We'll see each other more often." Irma smiled and replied, "I agree, that's exactly what I need. Thank you for everything. You know, my dears, in childhood, I used to get so angry when Mom made me play with you all the time. And now I understand how great it is to have a brother and sister who will always help me. Irma got the job. She even enjoyed cleaning. One day, while tidying up a room as usual, she found someone's phone, which had fallen between the bed and the chair. Without hesitation, Irma approached the administrator, Joshua, and handed him the found item. "Here, I found this in the room. It needs to be returned to the guest." Joshua just waved it off, and, "Irma, you're certainly commendable for bringing it here, but I don't need it. The room has been vacant for almost a day now. If the phone was really important, it would have been claimed long ago. Take it for yourself if you want, and finish cleaning quickly. We're expecting important guests." The woman was taken aback. She was against appropriating what didn't belong to her. At the end of her shift, Irma found the surname and contacts of the guest. Irma set out to return the phone to its owner. She remembered the guest. He was a pleasant man in his 40s, athletic with a kind look, but he somehow mysteriously disappeared from the hotel. He was at dinner the evening before, and in the morning she was instructed to urgently clean his room. However, Irma lived there, and she knew for sure that this man hadn't left. There was some mystery here, and it troubled the woman. Irma called the apartment, but the door was opened by a vulgarly made-up, unpleasant lady. She stared at the guest with confusion. "Do we know each other?" Irma took the phone out of her bag and began, "Hello. I work as a chambermaid at the hotel. Yesterday I found this phone in one of the rooms. It belongs to Andrew. He lives here, doesn't he? Someone is looking for him, probably. After all, it's an expensive thing." To her surprise, the lady began to shout, "I don't need this phone, and my husband isn't home. Besides, we haven't been living together for a month. We're getting divorced. So, did you find it at the hotel? What was he doing there? Probably fooling around with girls. Don't come here anymore." She slammed the door shut in front of Irma. The woman was shocked. How could this lady be indifferent to her own husband? She remembered too well what she herself had recently gone through. The woman returned to the hotel, charged the phone, and decided to see what was on it. There was no password. She looked at the photos. Everything was normal, family pictures, just beautiful images, advertisements. And then she found a very recent video. What she saw shocked her. It was footage from a surveillance camera. 2 young men with knives attacked some respectable man in a suit. Irma even closed her eyes and screamed, then quickly turned off the phone. She dressed quickly and ran to the police. After viewing the recording, the investigator was shocked. "Wow, we just had an unsolved case of a banker's death. It turns out that this Andrew had evidence of the murder on him, and he was probably being threatened. And the criminals, they're well-known figures in the criminal world. Thank you, ma'am, you've almost solved the case for us. We'll find this man, Andrew, no doubt. You're free to go." Irma was worried and pleaded, "Please find Andrew. I don't personally know him, but I think this person is in trouble and no one cares about him." A week passed, but Irma kept thinking about the missing guest. And then, one day, the same investigator called her with joyful news. "Good day, we found Andrew. The criminals were hiding him in the basement of an abandoned house on the outskirts. They were torturing him and demanding the surveillance footage. He's currently undergoing treatment at the city hospital. You can visit him if you want." Irma barely finished her shift, and the next morning she went to visit Andrew. All the way to the hospital, she wondered. What would she say to him? How would their meeting go? The woman timidly knocked and entered the hospital room. She immediately recognized Andrew from the photo on her phone. He lay on the bed, his leg in a cast, his arms and head bandaged, and several plasters covering scratches on his face. When Andrew saw the visitor, he genuinely smiled. Irma introduced herself. "Hello, Andrew. I'm Irma, the chambermaid from the hotel where you stayed. I found your phone while cleaning. The investigator told me they found you, so I decided to visit. How are you feeling? I brought you some food." Andrew was on the verge of tears. He grabbed Irma's hands and began to thank her. "Thank you, Irma. Thank you so much. If it weren't for you, I would have been killed for sure. The investigator told me how persistently you tried to return my phone, even went to the police. I work as a security guard at a bank and often review surveillance footage. That night the manager was attacked and I had the recording. However, I didn't have time to take it to the police. I was threatened, so I hid in hotels, thinking I could outsmart the criminals. But I almost lost my life. They broke my arms and legs, trying to find out where the recording was. So, you saved my life, Irma said quietly. Honestly, I wasn't planning to go to the police. Your wife just didn't take your phone. The man sighed heavily. Yes, we are actually getting divorced. She's angry with me. She didn't like anything. Not the job, not enough money, the modest apartment. I didn't even want to go home to her, but I endured it, still loved her. And recently she found another man, so she said she's divorcing me. Will you come to visit me again? I would really like that. It's so nice when such a beautiful and kind woman cares about you. Irma started visiting Andrew regularly in the hospital. They talked a lot. She told him about her problems, about how she went from being a director to a chambermaid, about her husband's betrayal. Andrew sincerely sympathized with Irma. Somehow they grew closer without noticing it and started dating. Andrew divorced his wife and rented an apartment. That's where they lived together with Irma. One evening during dinner, Andrew suddenly asked, Irma, tell me, what is your deepest dream? What do you want the most? It's very important for me to know. The woman smiled sadly and replied, You know, I spent all my childhood with my younger brother and sister. Then I studied hard, tried to find a good job. I thought that was the most important thing in life. I wanted to forget about poverty and become successful, but when I lost everything at once, I suddenly realized that I wasn't really living. Or rather, I was living, but someone else's life. And I never even went on vacation, always hustling, working, and now it all seems so foolish. My biggest wish is to live with you somewhere by the sea, walk along the coast, and just love each other. Andrew hugged Irma tenderly and replied, That's a great idea. I wanted to suggest we leave too, to forget all the bad. After the divorce, I still have a house in the suburbs and a car. I think if we sell everything, we can buy a small house by the sea. Will you go with me? I would be happy to spend the rest of my life with you. You're the first woman who cares about me so much, who truly loves. I feel it, darling, and I want to spend every second together. Irma kissed Andrew and said, I agree. And don't worry about money. Happiness isn't in them. I know that for sure now. The couple did just that. They bought a small house by the sea and moved there. Irma was happy. She and Andrew lived in love and understanding. Irma got a job as an accountant, and Andrew now worked repairing household appliances at a small company. Natalie and Paul got married, and she gave birth to a wonderful boy. Paul officially adopted the child, giving him his surname, and immediately started calling him his son. Natalie greatly appreciated everything Paul did for her, now understanding what a real man should be. They, along with Paul's family and Lily, often visited Irma. Sometimes there were so many guests that they had to sleep, even in the gazebo outside. Irma loved it when they had dinner outside in the evenings, joked around. Her nephews ran around, frolicked, and ate sweet grapes. It felt so good in her soul, surrounded only by loyal friends, her beloved husband, and it was so great that everyone cared and worried about each other. One day, Irma and Natalie were setting the table when an old TV was playing in the kitchen. The news was on. Suddenly, the news anchor announced, Yesterday, Noel and his mother Taryn died in an avalanche at the ski resort. Unfortunately, no one could be saved. Everyone froze and looked at each other. Irma even dropped a plate from her hands, and it shattered into pieces. Natalie hugged her and said, Well, life is fair after all. He thought he would live off your money until retirement. Honestly, I don't feel sorry for him at all. He ruined both our lives. That's what he deserves. Irma regained her composure a bit and said, You're right, of course, but on the other hand, if it weren't for the divorce, I would never have met Andrew, and you would never have met Paul. Right. The most important thing is that we found our love. We're able to create families. Let's not dwell on Noel anymore, okay? Irma became the godmother to Natalie's son, and Andrew became the godfather. They adored playing with the little boy, giving him gifts, teaching him everything they knew. Irma realized that if two people truly love each other, then whether they have children or not is not the most important thing at all. After all, it's pleasant just to be silent with your beloved, isn't it? Isn't that happiness?